Okay, so we're diving into something today that I think a lot of people have seen and are kind of wondering, what's the deal with this?
Right.
It's Make America Great and Glorious Again.
Magaga?
Yes, MAGA.
Wow.
Obviously building on the foundation of MAGA.
Hmm.
And I think, for anyone who's seen this, maybe just in passing, they're probably thinking like, what? What is that all about?
Yeah.
What's the extra, oof that they're trying to add to it?
Right. What's the glorious part, I guess?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to dive into today. We've got some materials here that are going to, give us kind of a focused look at this updated slogan from Donald Trump and really try to figure out, what it means, what it signifies, and maybe even like what the impact could be.
Yeah, and I think, in our deep dive today, what we really want to do is try to make sure that we don't overwhelm anyone with,
Yeah.
all the kind of stuff that's surrounding this, because there's a lot of buzz around it. There's a lot of different takes on it.
Yeah.
And we really want to like distill this down into the core of like, what is this slogan really trying to say?
Exactly.
What are the pieces of it?
Yeah. So we've got excerpts that are going to explore, kind of the transition from MAGA to MAGA.
Mm-hmm.
What are the core ideas behind this new slogan and how it's being received so far?
Yeah, like what's the reaction to it from both sides?
Exactly. So think
Yeah.
of this as, really your direct route to understanding this and not getting bogged down in, a lot of the extra stuff that's out there.
Right.
So yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah.
I mean, we all remember MAGA, Make America Great Again.
Yeah. Such a powerful slogan.
Yeah. It was so resonant and it really tapped into this feeling I think that a lot of people had of wanting to restore something that had been lost,
Yeah.
and promising like a stronger America through, things like stronger economic growth,
Right.
tougher, immigration enforcement,
Mhm.
a focus on traditional values. And it really connected with people who, I think felt like the country was heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty inarguable that it was an incredibly effective slogan, right?
Yeah.
Like it really just summed up a lot of things for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And I think what's fascinating when we look at MAGA is how the addition of glorious reframes the ambition.
Right.
Like it's not just about like going back to some kind of past strength.
Right.
It's suggesting like a vision of reaching an even higher level
Right.
of national standing and achievement.
Yeah.
And, while great, it could be open to like,
Reputation.
interpretation. Yeah,
Yeah.
individual interpretation.
Right.
Glorious carries this much stronger sense of like undeniable triumph and like honor, like almost on the world stage.
Yeah, it's like going beyond just being great. It's
Yeah.
like you're achieving this like,
Elevated.
yeah, almost like untouchable level
Yeah.
of success or achievement.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I think that that's something that is important to consider when we're looking at this, is that it's not just like a synonym swap.
Right.
It's actually like a really like kind of significant change in terms of the ambition of the message.
Right.
And it could signal an intention to not just improve domestically,
Mm-hmm.
but to really like reassert America's position on the global stage.
Right.
In a really like, powerful way.
Yeah, and maybe even in a way that's like, America is unchallenged in its power and leadership.
Right, exactly. Like a return to a time when
Yeah.
maybe America was seen as like the single
Yeah.
dominant force
A dominant force. Yeah,
on
exactly.
the world stage.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, this word glorious, it definitely evokes images of like historical victories, intense national pride,
Yeah.
maybe even a sense of like American exceptionalism.
Yeah, like we are unique.
Yeah.
We are special.
Yeah, or set apart.
Yeah, and maybe even destined
Yeah.
for this kind of greatness.
Exactly. And the material that we're looking at here really highlights how Trump seems to be intending to use this to really emphasize this idea of
Right.
America as like uniquely special and, to reignite this really powerful sense of national pride.
Yeah, to kind of recapture that feeling
Right.
that maybe existed in the past.
Right. Yeah. And so it's almost like MAGA has been amplified
Yeah.
with this like, real spotlight now on international prestige.
Right. It's not just about being great at home.
Yeah.
It's about being great
on the world stage.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's about projecting that power outward.
Okay, so when we consider what MAGA actually stands for in terms of like concrete policy directions, it seems like, the fundamental pillars of Trump's vision are still there.
Yeah.
But now they're kind of filtered through this lens of like you know,
Gloriousness.
yeah, this heightened sense of ambition that glorious seems to imply.
Right, so it's not just about achieving these things.
It's about achieving them in a way that is like
Spectacular.
spectacular. Yeah, and that puts America in this like
Dominant position.
dominant position. Yeah.
So let's break these down one by one and kind of see how this glorious lens applies to them.
Okay.
So first we've got the economy.
Yeah.
The core focus seems to still be on, bringing back manufacturing jobs,
Yeah.
tackling inflation, achieving energy independence.
Yeah, the kind of bread and butter issues
Yeah,
that affect people's daily lives.
exactly. But how does glorious fit into this? Like, what does a glorious economy look like?
Right. Well, I think it suggests that it's not just about like a functional economy,
Right.
where everybody's got a job and
We're not in a recession.
inflation's under control.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about an economy where America is the clear dominant force
Globally.
globally.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not just about like, being okay. It's about being like the best.
Right. So it's not just about being good. It's about being the best.
Right. And it's about,
Setting the standard.
setting the standard. Yeah. And maybe even dictating the terms
Yeah.
of the global economy.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a pretty significant, addition to just,
Right.
economic growth.
It's about dominance.
That's about dominance, yeah.
Okay.
Then we move to borders and immigration.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise here that, stricter immigration laws,
Yeah.
continuing construction of that border wall, and reducing illegal immigration. These are all still like central tenets.
Yeah. Very much core to the platform.
Yeah. And so in this context, what does a glorious America look like when it comes to borders and immigration?
Right. Well, it seems to be linked to this idea of like
Tightly controlled borders.
tightly controlled borders. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a very strong sense of national sovereignty. Like we decide
Yeah,
who comes in
exactly.
and how they come in.
Right. So it's this idea that like a truly strong and glorious nation has to have this like
Impenetrable, almost border.
Right. And it's like a fundamental part of its identity and security.
Exactly. It's like, this is who we are.
Yeah.
We control this.
Yeah.
And this is how we're going to stay strong and secure.
Okay, so strong borders equal glorious America.
In this view.
In this view.
Okay.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the America First foreign policy.
Yes.
And this continues to really advocate for a more selective engagement in international affairs.
Yeah.
Prioritizing domestic needs
Wow.
and pursuing trade agreements that are, perceived as
Advantageous.
overwhelmingly advantageous to the U.S.
Yeah. Putting America's interests first.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we add glorious to this, what does that suggest to you?
Well, I think it suggests maybe a more unilateral approach, where America feels empowered to act independently
Right.
and maybe less constrained by international agreements.
If they're not seen as like directly benefiting the U.S.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it's not good for us,
Yeah.
we don't do it.
Yeah, we're not going to do it. Yeah.
We're not going to play that game.
So it's really about, America's power being used very assertively on the global stage, maybe even prioritizing bilateral relationships where, the U.S. feels like it has a lot of leverage over
Right.
the other party.
Yeah, where we can dictate the terms.
Yeah. Okay, so again, it goes back to this idea of dominance.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay. All right. So moving on, we also see a really big emphasis in the materials that we're looking at on like cultural and social conservatism.
Yeah.
And resisting progressive policies in areas like education, gender identity, free speech.
Yeah.
This is all presented as like vital to
Right.
achieving this glorious vision.
Right.
And the rhetoric here really positions Trump as like a defender
Yeah.
of traditional American values. such as
Against
the
The wolf left,
Yeah, exactly.
whatever the term of the day is.
Right. Yeah. So what does glorious mean in this context? Like, what does a glorious society look like?
Well, I think it kind of taps into this desire for like a perceived past cultural unity.
Right.
Like a time when everybody agreed on things.
Right.
And, it suggests this aim to restore not just like economic and political strength, but also like a certain social order
Right.
based on particular values and norms.
Yeah. So it's almost like a return to a time when, there was less division,
Yeah.
less debate about these issues.
Yeah, where there was a clear sense of right and wrong
Right.
and a shared understanding of, what America stood for.
Okay. So it's about unity. It's about shared values.
Yeah.
It's about tradition.
Yeah.
Okay.
And order.
And order. Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, we have a key pillar that's focused on election integrity and political reforms.
Yeah.
And the emphasis here is on restoring faith in the
Yeah.
electoral process
Mm-hmm.
through measures like voter ID laws
Right.
and, enhanced security.
Making sure that the elections are fair.
Right. And this frequently references, past claims of election irregularities.
Yeah.
And so within this kind of framework of glorious,
Mm-hmm.
what does this suggest?
Well, I think it implies a desire for an electoral system that's not only fair, but also like perceived as completely legitimate
By everyone.
by everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
Like beyond question.
Right.
So that there's no doubt
Yeah.
in anyone's mind,
No suspicion.
no suspicion
Yeah.
that the results are accurate.
Okay, so a glorious America has like a perfect electoral system.
Yeah, an unquestionable
Unquestionable, yeah.
electoral system.
Okay, all right. So we've kind of broken down these pillars of what MAGA seems to represent.
Mhm.
But how has this slogan actually been received,
Yeah.
and what kind of political impact has it had so far?
That's a good question.
Our materials suggest that it pretty quickly became, a prominent rallying cry
Yeah.
at Trump's rallies and events.
Mhm.
It seems like it really solidified his connection with his core supporters.
Yeah, it's catchy. Yes.
Memorable.
It's very concise,
Yeah.
and it encapsulates a lot of his central themes.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how effectively a slogan can function as like this powerful symbol
Yeah.
for a large group of people.
Right.
It's like this shorthand for this whole complex set of beliefs and aspirations.
Right. It's more than just a slogan. It's like an identity.
Right, exactly. And it creates this sense of like shared identity
Mhm.
among supporters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how like language can do that.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful. But of course, it hasn't escaped criticism.
Of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, what does?
That doesn't.
You know,
What doesn't?
what?
And political opponents have, largely characterized it as basically just a continuation of the Magier rhetoric,
Yeah.
maybe with just like a slightly more grandiose adjective added.
Yeah, they're saying it's just Magaga with like a little extra sparkle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But without any real new substance.
Yeah, no new ideas. Yeah, so they're saying it's more about branding than like actual policy.
Right. It's like putting lipstick on a pig,
Yeah,
so to speak.
right, exactly.
But I think it's important to note that, for a lot of conservatives,
Right.
the adoption of MAGA is seen as like a bold and confident reaffirmation
Of the core vision.
of the core vision. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like we're doubling down
Yeah.
on this.
We're not backing down.
They're not backing
We're
out at
going
all.
even further.
Yeah. We're going for glorious,
Yeah, exactly.
not just great.
Right. So I think regardless of how you view it, you can't deny that Trump has this ability to like
Yeah.
shape the political discourse.
He's a master communicator.
Yeah, he really is.
Whether you like what he's saying or not,
Yeah.
he knows how to get people talking.
Yeah, and he's really good at, coining these impactful slogans
Yeah.
and mobilizing his base around them.
Yeah. And MAGA, even though it's relatively new,
Yeah.
it's already become part of the political vocabulary.
Right. People are using it. People are talking about it.
Yeah, it's entered the lexicon.
Exactly. It's having an impact.
Absolutely.
So looking ahead, what can we anticipate for the future of MAGA?
Well, I think our sources rightly point out that its ultimate impact will really depend on, like,
Policies?
policies. Yeah.
If Trump were to return to office,
Right. Yeah.
will he actually implement policies that,
Reflect.
reflect this idea of a glorious America?
No, because right now it's just a slogan.
Yeah.
It's a symbol.
You're right.
It's a representation of an ideology.
But it's not concrete.
Right.
Yeah, and so, just like MAGA did before,
Yeah.
this new slogan, MAGA, really encapsulates a broader political philosophy
Mhm.
that's rooted in, nationalism, economic strength, cultural conservatism.
Right.
So it's really like a reminder.
Yeah, a touchstone.
Yeah, a touchstone for those like fundamental principles.
But those core values.
Yeah, okay. And so the big question, of course, is will MAGA attain the same level of historical significance as MAGA?
Right. Is it going to be as impact?
Yeah. I mean, it's still pretty early.
Yeah. It's very early.
But it's clear that it's already having an impact
Yeah.
on the political discourse.
It's shaping the conversation.
Yeah, and it's shaping how Trump and his supporters articulate their goals.
Yeah. It's giving them a framework.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's fair to say that, time will tell if it becomes as iconic as Magier.
Right.
But its role in, like, framing Trump's vision
Yeah.
and really reinforcing that vision for his base
Mm.
is already, very apparent.
Yeah. It's giving them something to rally behind.
Right.
It's giving them a vision of the future.
Exactly. Okay, so just to kind of summarize everything that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
We've explored how MAGA builds on MAGA by adding this whole dimension of like national prestige and success through this addition of glorious.
Right.
And this encompasses these, specific policy objectives
Yeah.
aimed at achieving, global economic leadership, enforcing stricter border controls,
Yeah.
prioritizing America first in foreign policy, advocating for cultural and social conservatism, and emphasizing election integrity.
Yeah. Hitting all those key points.
Hitting all the key points. Yeah, and while it's quickly become this really potent rallying cry for Trump's base, it's also faced criticism for being, potentially just a rebranding of previous ideas.
Right.
So ultimately, I think the true impact of MAGA will be determined, by what actually happens with policy.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words. Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens.
We'll have to wait and see. But its role in framing this political vision is already significant.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think, to bring this all back to you, our listener, who's interested in gaining knowledge quickly and thoroughly, we've really tried to provide a structured understanding of what this new slogan signifies. And hopefully that'll allow you to kind of navigate these conversations with greater clarity and make sense of it all.
Yeah, it makes sense of it all, exactly.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you to consider as you go about your day.
Okay.
How might this, subtle but significant addition of glorious really alter the focus and the expectations compared to the original Magaga slogan?
That's a good question.
Yeah. What specific actions beyond the stated policy goals do you believe would truly embody a glorious America?
Right. Like, what does it actually look like?
Yeah, what does that look? What does that feel like?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
In practice.
Yeah, in practice, exactly. So it's a question worth reflecting on as the slogan continues to, shape the political landscape.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
It really is.
Yep.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, see you next time.
See you.